Welcome to another episode of In the Middle. Are you caught in the middle of two cultures? In this podcast, I share my guest experiences in living in two or more cultures. Hi, my name is Eddie Minaya. I'm a creative professional living in the Washington, D.C. area. I was born in Peru and I've lived in this area for the last 35 years. Today, we're going to have a little bit different episode. We're going to talk about the different an individual perspective. We're going to interview someone that lives in two or more cultures, and it's also gay. He has a Middle Eastern background, so for privacy reasons, I am going to keep his name and also his face out of the video. If you're watching this on YouTube, we're going to call him, for privacy reason, Hamid. If you like this content, don't forget to subscribe. This podcast can be found in YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. Search for In the Middle Podcast. Are you caught in two cultures? Well, thank you for taking the time today. In the introduction, I mentioned that I am not gonna show your face of anyone watching this on YouTube. I'm only showing my face, and I am not gonna mention your name or the country where you're from. I am going to just say that you're from a conservative Muslim country. That you are married, and that your husband is Hispanic from a country in South America. I'm also going to distort your voice so it doesn't sound like you. And again, for privacy reasons, I am going to call you Hamid. And for anyone listening, the reason why I'm hiding kind of his protecting his privacy. It's not because he is not proud and out to be gay. It's more for privacy reasons because of the conservative country that he's from. So let's get started.
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you for including me in your programs. I love your programs. And the fact that I have to hide my name and all that is just shows that LGBT issue is still a big issue.
Yeah.
Is not accepted in many countries.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah. But yes.
So, but I do want to help others. Whether they are born here or not, coming to age with a minority sexual identity is still an issue in the United States, and more so in other developing countries, whether they're Muslim or not.
I agree.
There are issues that we are still struggling with. When I start from the United States, I've lived most of my life in this country. I'm more familiar with issues in this country than my place of birth, to be honest. Because I left my country at a very early age. I was still in my late teens. But nevertheless, I have family back at home. And it's really their privacy that I'm trying to protect.
Absolutely, yes.
But just recently, we all heard in the news that the Tennessee governor banned drag shows. This is something that even when gay community was not accepted in this country, even in 70s. Drag shows went on. They were one way of escape, one way of expressing being different.
Yeah.
And essentially, the governor of Tennessee is blocking their First Amendment rights
Yeah.
of expression, of being on a stage, expressing themselves for who they are. So the whole process of emancipation, women rights, LGBT rights, transgender rights, they're all usually tend to be, unfortunately, 2 steps forward and 1 step backward.
Yeah.
Or the other way around, 1 step forward, 2 steps backward. The fact that abortions are being banned in many states, and the federal law allows the states to ban it, a very basic woman's right, a human right of controlling their own body, while capital punishment is still the law of the land in many states.
Yeah.
I won't even consider United States as one of the most advanced countries when it comes to human rights.
Yeah.
So let alone other countries that are ruled by religious dogmas and archaic rules, essentially made by masculine dominant power, the men.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people talk about how late United States was for giving voting rights to women. In 1920. 1920 is our second decade of 20th century.
Yeah.
And up until then, women did not have voting rights, but nobody asks who banned women rights to vote, who denied women their basic human rights of equality. It happened in 1777, a year after independence of the United States. You would think that founding fathers were all alive and saying men are born equal,
Right.
Basic of the Constitution, literally meant male men,
Right.
and not
Now
women, because when you say men, that also means women, but none of them questioned it. And why did they have to ban women from voting, even though they didn't vote before that either? But at least, you know, there was an opening, there was a chance. They closed it from 1777 till 1920. Same with emancipation and ban of slavery. Slavery was banned after civil wars, and yet it wasn't until 1960s when African Americans, Martin Luther King, started voicing his opposition to segregation. So, you know, the history of mankind is full of brutality and oppressing the oppressed and oppressing not just minorities, but, you know, women are certainly not minority.
Yeah.
But human beings.
Yeah.
And one nation against another, one race against another. So this topic is much wider than just my own story. It echoes history of humankind towards true equality. Where I was born, the concepts were very murky, very upside down. One thing that I want to clarify to the listeners who are born here and not in, say, South America or Middle East, because I know that there are very many similarities of concepts and sexual identity historically very similar to Middle East and South America too. Not anymore. South America is very much advanced.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was growing up, um, if you ask me uh, when I knew I was gay
Mm-hmm.
and when I identified myself as a gay
Yeah.
person, um, it was very late because concept of being gay was not even around. So in other words, schools were segregated, or still segregated where I'm from. Girls go to separate schools than boys, and during adolescence, when kids grow up, whether they're female or male, the hormones kick
Yeah.
in, and their classmates, their friends who are of same sex
Mm-hmm.
are the only people they are in contact with. So practicing homosexuality is very widespread, um, and therefore, even though I wasn't as much engaged in those temporary relationships, or in other words, fooling around with other guys, I wasn't as much involved.
Uh-huh.
I was very conservative myself, but it was happening all the time. So for years I thought that it's normal and everybody is attracted to same sex.
So you thought it was normal because you were in a setting, when you were growing up in a classroom where everyone was the same sex. Like you said, boys were with, male with male, females were with females. So for them to have a little more affection, a friend to another friend, for you was normal. It was not necessarily that, that you were gay. It was just because you were growing up in the setting where everyone was being segregated by sex, meaning male and female.
Correct. And their terminologies that they use are very condescending terminologies that they use.
Mm-hmm.
Really reflects what is going on. The word faggot, or in Spanish punto, or is it punta? Is it punta or punto? It's punta, right?
Yes, I think that's how they're. Well, in Latin America, they have all kinds of derogatory names depending the country you're from.
Yeah, derogatory. They have it everywhere,
Yeah.
but nowadays, being politically correct, at least educated people don't use those
Correct.
words. But essentially, being at the receiving end for a guy
Mm-hmm.
was bad. But if you were, so to speak, the acting partner, and you were penetrating another guy, you could talk about it very proudly.
I see.
And then the kids showed off and talked that, oh, I did blah blah. So there were two derogatory terminologies used. The one was bottom, he's a bottom. And the other one was child molester. And whichever teacher, as nice and gentle as they were, but if a teacher was given a hard time, I usually applied to maths teachers for some reason, they called him a child molester. So kids were brutal. They labeled whomever they didn't like,
Yeah.
with that terminology, and I never witnessed or heard that a teacher would actually molest the kids. I'm sure that was happening too, but I haven't witnessed it. And nevertheless, half of the teachers were called child molesters. So there was no terminology for being gay. I kind of around 14, 15, I knew that I'm attracted to other guys and not girls at all. But I thought that it was a phase.
Okay.
So when I went to Europe, I did my education in Europe before I came to United States. I was actually, because we were going to do this interview today, I actually looked into the history, because in the prep questions you had asked the question, and please, we could start with those questions. But one of them was, did you have to hide your sexuality in England, and did you, because you were among other countrymen,
Yeah.
other students from my country? No, I did not. I didn't need to, because I was not sexually
So
active.
it's like
I
you
was
were acting like you
I
were
was
not really out because you weren't really out because you didn't know you weren't really having any relationship with anyone. You were just kind of living your education, kind of doing what you needed to do. But
yeah, being celibate,
Mhm.
despite the urge. As a young
Mhm.
guy, I denied myself a very simple right. I was living like a priest, like a celibate person in very young age, and I always regret that. The best years of my life, I did not enjoy sex. I did not have a healthy sexual relationship,
Mhm.
or any sexual relationship. Later on, I found out that they all knew, everybody around me, all my friends knew that I was gay, and they just didn't bring it up. And the reason they knew was because I never had a girlfriend. Everybody had a girlfriend, and I did not have a girlfriend.
The interesting.
I remember that a female friend of mine, way in, towards the end of my graduation, last years of my
Uh-huh.
bachelor's, told me, I go, why don't you find a boyfriend? You're gay. I got so mad. I still talk to her, and she always laughs about it. And, it was just a big denial. So, coming out of closet is not easy.
Mhm.
It's easier now, I assume, from what I'm hearing.
Mhm.
But it was only in 1993 when I first came to the United States. Believe it or not, I mean, internet was not around. I picked up the yellow pages and I was looking for a psychiatrist or psychologist who would fix me. And the first number I called, they said they recommended me to go to Whitman Walker. It was a clinic,
Mhm.
but at the same time they had a coming out group, and I went to coming out sessions,
Oh.
and I found out that for a long period of time, and I made really good friends there, and I found out that, and I was already in my 30s, and I found out that it was very common for Americans who were born here to also struggle with what I was struggling, in their 30s.
Struggling with
Uh,
like identifying yourself as
yes, sexual
your sexual
identity.
identity. Because at
Yes,
that point you were still thinking, I'm just something is wrong with me. I have to
right.
try to fix myself. Why don't I like girls? Why do I like guys? Is that kind of what was going through your mind?
Yes, and I'll tell you something else. Um, the Western culture is harsher in many sense than Middle Eastern
Mm-hmm.
cultures, where touching another man is more
Yeah,
forbidden.
it is.
Um,
Uh-huh.
I mean, men hold hands, and when they greet each other, they kiss each other on both cheeks, just like women do here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Two ladies, friends, come and see each other, they kiss each other on the cheeks.
Yeah.
Guys never do that,
Yeah, it is a little.
because that's
Yeah,
gay.
correct. That's with my background, the Hispanic background is same thing. When you kind of, it's not two kisses, but it's one kiss to women, but men and women, But when it's a guy, you shake the hand. You don't kiss him. You kiss your dad or you kiss your. And that's
Right,
it.
right. I know that.
But
I know that. But in Middle East,
yeah.
especially young guys hold hands. They put their arms around each other's shoulder when they walk in the street.
That doesn't
Um,
necessarily mean that they're gay. It's just part of the culture, right?
no,
It's part of the
no, it
culture.
is affection among same-sex male is completely accepted. It is not forbidden. And by affection, I don't mean sexual attraction, but expressing your friendship by touch,
Correct. Wow. Yeah. That is. Yeah.
hugging, kissing.
Yeah.
So, in many respects, I was ahead of American guys. One of the practices that we did was, if you have a boyfriend, or if it's not a boyfriend, just a friend, hold each other's hand in the street. I had no issue with that. And I saw that American guys my own age, that was just the biggest issue. Like, they could not do that.
Yeah. So, Abul, tell me, how do you think men or women today in the Middle East, like in Middle Eastern countries, how do they deal with the fact that they're gay? I mean, you mentioned, that some of the things are normal in terms of like affection, but what if you are gay? What if you do like the guy that you're holding hands with, but the other guy is just holding your hand because he's just being affectionate because he's your friend? Is that you think there's more of a almost like an underground society that can, where they can be free and open about their sexuality?
Oh, now everything is different because the world is so connected through internet, and majority of the population from where I am speaks English. At my time they didn't, so they have a lot of access to the word gay, just the way that it is in English, is used for in a positive way. And from what I'm hearing, there are established relationships, long-term relationships, partnership, two guys living together. However, the more well-off you are, and the more educated you are, and less religious, more secular you are, which happens mostly in the capital city of the country that I'm from, and not urban areas, is I won't say accepted, but they don't bother them. Like, the regimes of these dictatorship, Islamic and fundamentalist regimes don't bother rich gay couples.
They kind of look the other way.
Or they're either bribed, or they live in part of the city that has its own world. They're islands like that. I won't call them like gay-friendly neighborhood. They're just like rich upper cities, upper-class areas. Whereas, in urban villages and low-income neighborhoods, they're punished by death.
Wow. So, do you think that would eventually get better, let's say in 20 years from now? It sounds like it already, to a degree. If you think 20 years ago, even if you did have money, even if you did have power, but you came out and you were gay and you had a partner, it probably would still look, was looked wrong.
Yeah, in those years, they probably would have already moved up to another country, to Europe, etc. But I want to remind you of something I forgot to mention earlier, is that when I was going to college in England, even in 80s, there were no gay prides. The first gay pride in Manchester, where I went to college, was happened in 1985, very discreetly, and police crashed the bars, and then the hooligans came and attacked all the gay participants. And this was happening in a bar, it wasn't happening in the street. And I know that because it was all over the news.
Wow.
And even though like government condemned them, and I think they slapped some police's hands, but hooligans attacked them. There was the society in 1985 in England was the gay people were very closeted, and the society was not accepting it. It was also, don't forget that what was happening was AIDS crisis.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so the AIDS crisis did two things. It forced a lot of guys, like Hollywood actors, out of closet because they got sick and died.
Yeah.
There was no hiding anymore, and to get help and seek treatment, they had to have a louder voice. So, but at the same time, for someone like myself, who was coming out by coming out, I mean accepting myself, at least, not announcing it, but knowing that I'm gay and it's okay.
Yeah.
It was delayed. It delayed my coming out. AIDS epidemic delayed my coming out for good 10 years. This had nothing to do with where I was from. This had nothing to do with my discomfort. It was just fear of death. Because I remember that, they were putting these flyers out in universities and colleges and everywhere to avoid gay bars and gay the restrooms even. People were scared of sitting on the toilet because they didn't know how it got spread.
It's almost like when like COVID-19 started, no one knew and everyone was scared to do or go out. It was probably the same way.
Oh yeah, except you could easily catch COVID from surface. Maybe, I mean, now they're debating whether you could actually catch COVID from surface too.
Yeah.
But there was no way you would catch AIDS from surface.
Yeah, it was we just didn't, science wasn't there where it is today, so we didn't know. So
I remember when the first time I went to a gay bar in Manchester, people were drunk and they were kind of like blushing, but I was automatically looking for signs of disease, and I didn't stay there for more than a few minutes because everybody looked so red. They were drinking and they were laughing, and so funny enough, in 1986 I went back home for summer holiday, and one of my high school friends, we just fell in love and we had a completely full sexual relationship for 3 months that I was there, and we were madly in love with one another, and this was at a time that I had not had a single partner in England.
Wow. So when you and him were kids, you obviously started getting feelings that you were attracted to men, and I'm assuming he was going through the same thing, but he never said anything to you about those feelings of being attracted to men, and you didn't say anything to them. So almost like just like you and him were keeping that to yourself, right? You were not sharing it because it was really...
No, it was more spoken than that, because I kept saying that we're gay, and he kept saying, "Oh, you're only saying that because you have never been with a girl." He got married. He has a son, but his marriage didn't last long. He was in a bigger denial than I was, because people can be bisexual too, so don't forget that.
Yeah.
And bisexuality somehow, because it's genetical, it is more, I think that it is more it happens more in among Middle Eastern people than Western people. I don't know whether it's the culture or not, but I think that men back home can engage, and it could be for the reasons that I said, that it's not, that touching another man is not so forbidden. They do engage in sex with both men and women. So I don't know whether, but just the fact that I'm not in too much contact with him anymore. But his marriage did not last long.
Yeah, well, that,
with,
it's,
with the woman. So, anyways, it's just that it takes time to accept yourself. I remember that when I first came to the United States, I have relatives here, and I used to get this gay newspaper called Blade. I don't know if it still exists or not, because everything is online now. But that was the big thing, to read it and to know where the bars are, etc. Nobody goes to gay bars anymore, as far as I know. But that was a big thing, because gay people were closeted enough to meet each other in certain spots, and those spots were kind of reserved for gay people only. That is gone. I mean, in Washington, D.C., that doesn't exist anymore.
yeah.
Gay neighborhoods right now around DuPont Circle are, I guess they still, they are still there, but I don't think that, I think you would come across a lot of women, a lot of straight guys in there too. It's just mixed. But at that time, in 1994, when I finally came to accept myself, I used to have these newsletters at home, and I was so scared that if something happens to me, like a car accident, my relatives would come and find out that I'm gay because I have those gay newsletters. Now, thinking how I was thinking then is totally ludicrous, because I go to their same people's houses for dinners with my husband.
Yeah, well,
And my husband is as respected as any of my cousins, husbands or wives. And it's really an internalized, I would even say internalized hatred. And that is what is the society does.
so how did your family, when you told them that you were going to get married, how did your family or your husband's family take it? I mean, at that point, I'm assuming you were already in a relationship with him when you decided to kind of get married. Were they accepting of your relationship?
Yes, I came out to my mother in 2005. That was the same year that I met my husband. My mother was shocked and surprised, and I don't think that she could sleep that night. But the next day, she came and gave me a big hug. She called my aunt and talked to her. I guess my aunt wasn't 100% sure about my sexuality either, but she's younger than my mom, and she had told her that it's okay, it's acceptable, and it's just the way that I am. And I found out that she was reading more about it. She bought books about it, and that was it. Like, my father was already passed, and I don't think that I could have ever come out to my father. He was older, and he was more religious. He never imposed his religiosity on us, but I don't think he would have ever accepted his son being gay.
Well, Hispanic families are also, especially I think the older generation, they still have a hard time, not necessarily accepting it, but understanding it. And I'm talking about maybe, the two, like say my mom's generation or my grandparents' generation, where for them, it was kind of because they also were in the Hispanic community. They come from a Catholic more background,
Right.
more about religious, and the Catholic Church shows you, yeah, if you're, now I think that even the Catholic Church is a little more accepting, but
Right.
before it was like, if you're gay, you're not accepted in the church. You're gonna, you're gonna go to hell, whatever, the church goes, and that kind of kind of goes with with the older generation. So I think those older generation is still very hard for them if they had a son or someone close to them that is gay. And I said it's not to accept it, it's to understand it. Understand why are you gay. But it I think we've come a long way in the Hispanic culture, at least today. I think certain countries are still more, they're very macho like, they're very, man is men, women are women, etc. Some, I think in South America at least, it feels that it's started to be a lot more open. People are the relationships of men and women. People that I know from my childhood that are actually gay and that are in relationships with their partners, their husbands, and everyone is kind of looked at differently. But again, that's my generation, and I'm sure their parents and their grandparents still have a little bit of kind of a, you know, lack of understanding why. Um, but what advice would you give to someone that lives, let's say, in a country like a Western country, like say like the United States, but that is gay, but it comes from a conservative family or a country? What advice would you give that person that it's wants to come out?
Yeah, I mean, my husband's example is a good one. Um, he's from South America. His family is very, I would say, like normally, average religious Catholic family. I mean, at dinner, they always pray before starting to eat. And they go to church. My husband doesn't go to church on Sundays, but his parents did. His mom is passed now, and I witnessed when I wasn't sitting there, but I knew the day that he planned to go and come out to his parents, and his mom first told him that he needs to go to church more often, and God will forgive his sins. That was it. They completely accepted him, and I was there in every gathering, and I was there in Christmas with his family, and we spent holidays together. And he was himself shocked how easily they accepted him. Now, I'm not saying that is going to be the scenario with every individual, but from my own experience and from my husband's experience, I can easily say that number one is that you accept yourself the way you are and who you are, and not forced to change how you're born. And it is just understanding that, it's a genetical thing, and certain people have blue eyes, and certain people have black eyes, and certain people are attracted to same sex, and who are in minority, but nevertheless 10% or so of the entire society. You test the water.
Yeah.
You will be surprised who would accept. I had friends that older friends that I never told them I was gay, and even like as recent as 2-3 years ago, I've told them. But those were the friends that were not living in this country, that I had not had much contact with. But one of the reasons that I didn't have much contact with them was that I was still uncomfortable. But once I told them, and they just laughed it off and said, "Oh, well, we already knew. You never had, duh, you never had a girlfriend."
Do you think more people from this conservative and religious cultures, do you think more of them are out in the United States than before? Do you think now they feel a little more comfortable to come out?
I think that certain Christian denominations are harsher than mosques and Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
And I've witnessed that through the coming out group, my gay friends, and where I used to hang out a lot more in gay community when I was younger. Essentially, I used to socialize more often than I do now. But people who they were black or white or Latino, usually born again Christian or Southern Baptist, those denominations do not accept. There are so inevitably those guys just cut off with their tradition and cut off sometimes with their family.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that is the right thing, but they have no other choice. They either have to live who they are or keep lying to themselves because their religion is not accepting. The Catholics are interesting. They're just, Pope has not accepted homosexuality. I won't be surprised one of these days he would, or maybe the next Pope. But there are already several gay Catholic churches. As a matter of fact, I had a American Catholic friend, Irish American Catholic friend, who took me to Christmas events, masses in Dignity. Dignity is the name of the church, not far from where I am, and they are kind of they're cool. They're not as cool as Episcopals and Presbyterians, but they joke about it that Pope is rejected us, but we're still chasing him. And they are they're fine. They're not. The religion is not an issue for them. And you're talking about South America and Mexico. Mexico had gay marriage approved way before the United States.
Yeah, they did.
I think Brazil and Argentina did too. I don't know about Peru. Is gay marriage?
I don't think it's legal yet, but it is definitely a lot more.
Are you sure?
I'm not 100% sure, but I know that it's accepted. It is accepted, and when I was a kid, when I was still living in Peru, when I must have been maybe 7 or 8, my dad always wanted us to be exposed to all the things that were out in the world, including gay people. And I'm talking about, this is like somewhere in the early mid 80s. He would take us sometimes to this place to where gay people will kind of congregate, and they would play volleyball, and they will put this show, because some of them were trans, so they were dressed as women. Some were trans, where they had done already some they were men that looked like women with breasts. Some of them were just with the makeup, but it was a mix. It primarily were men that were gay, and a mix of gay men and trans, and they would play volleyball, and then they will kind of make it a fun, because they will call each other names, but it was more in a entertaining way. And they will have these games on Sunday, and a lot of people will congregate around the games, and they will come to see the games, not because, and it was free, they were just doing it for fun, more to expose themselves and to see that there's nothing wrong with them. But I remember my dad took us there, and that was probably for me, like the first time I realized exactly, or trying to understand, kind of gay, and well, even then it was called something else, but or whatever it was called. I don't remember what it was called, but it was kind of my first time that I was kind of looked at, and I was like, oh, there's men that look like women, or that they want to be women. I didn't know that it was called trans, etc. And even though I'm not gay, and there's certain things that as a straight man, it's hard for me, just like maybe for you, it's like, well, you don't like women. It's like, same for me, that I don't like men. But it is, I completely understand it, in terms of like, I accept it, understand it, I have find it, it's just who you are.
Yeah, you are from younger generation. I mean, you're good 10 years younger than
Right.
me.
Yeah.
And you were in Lima. I mean, Lima is way more advanced than countryside.
It is. So it was, there was a lot of that. And now, as I mentioned, I have friends that when I went to school there, that are gay, and that are they're out. They have partners. I'm not, like, I'm not 100% sure if marriage is legal, but it's out, and everyone's okay with it, and it's fine. But do you think more people? How do you see our society progressing, I guess, in the next, let's say?
Well, like I said, like, first of all, my heart goes to my transgender friends. I have few transgender friends, and if I didn't have, this society in the United States is giving them the hardest time. The Trump's government completely ruined any possible progression that step by step United States had made by nominating extremely right wing judges who are ruling right and left in different states, against allowing a trans guy to someone who is identified physically at birth as a girl, but identifies himself as a boy, with or without surgery or hormone therapy, don't allow them to play in men's basketball and vice versa. But that is just, tip of the iceberg. There are a lot of healthcare that is denied, insurances that are denied to trans individuals, and the worst scenarios are with adolescent trans kids that are not accepted by in certain states, usually conservative southern states. They are really being sacrificed for what, I don't know. They're going through a very, very difficult time, especially in military.
Yeah.
And say, you have to be so rich to be able to maintain your body the way you want, or the way you tend to identify yourself, because the medications, the hormone therapies that I know not everybody goes for those. I mean, I'd love to introduce you to one of my trans friends who would have an interview, one of these interviews with you.
Yeah.
And she's very open. She would tell you stories that would just shock you. And I even in gay community, gay people themselves have not really reckoned with trans people. We don't feel their issues. For us, it's just a matter of sexuality. It's not. For us, it's a sexual attraction and sexual desire. That's it. For them, it's very physical. It's their body, it's their being that is different, and society has to label people as she or she. There's nothing in the middle. Somehow recently I seen like job applications and here and there that they ask you, should we refer to you
Yeah.
as he or she
Your
or
pronouns, yeah.
with your pronouns? That's a good progress, but how can that be a progress in a country that one of the states is banning drag shows?
Yeah.
I mean, drags are not even transgender. They're just, cross clothing and wearing different other sexes clothing. I mean, why should that be banned?
Yeah. No,
I can wear whatever I want.
I agree. Yeah, I think, as you say, we take 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. I think we're as a society, we are progressing, but we still got a long ways to go. And, I'm hoping that by the time we look in the future and, let's say 10 years from now, we'll be able to say, well, now we're a little further along than where we are today. But, Abu,
They all have to happen at the same time. First, the women need to get the same salaries as
that's
men,
right.
which they are not. Military has to accept transgenders, and black people, African Americans, or dark skin, anybody needs to be transparent, like white people. So that I don't think 20 years is enough. As optimistic as I am.
We'll see how it goes. Well, I really appreciate your time tonight. I really appreciate the time, the
Likewise, thank you.
conversation we had. I think it's a definitely it was nice to hear your story. It was nice to hear kind of your the things that you went through, and I really appreciate the all the information you have provided us tonight.
You're welcome. My pleasure. It's all cultural issues, social issues that you are shedding a light on, and I am so proud of you for. I know how busy you are managing to do this with no expectation of financial expectation or anything. Is just wonderful. You're helping many people. I love to have you increase your audience as much as possible because this is very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you. For other listeners, thank you for listening, and until next time. If you like this content, don't forget to subscribe. This podcast can be found in YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. Search for In the Middle Podcast. Are you caught in two cultures?